You know how I think, but I'm thinking of all kind of things we could do with that group of ladies in Washington, D.C., along with the Calvary choir. Can I hear an amen right there? And so I've got a myriad of things running through my mind. I'm going to have to push that off to the side while I preach tonight. But anyway, that was wonderful, and what a blessing that was. And let me just say this tonight. I have to say this with respect to our sound team. As I was driving down here, a gentleman named Mark Moore, from all the way down in Ocala, Florida, called me, and he said, Brother Dave, I've been watching the services every night from Calvary Baptist in Union Grove. He said, something's going on over there. That's what he said, and it's been a great blessing. And so were it not for the video and audio guys, the sound team, listen, none of this would not only be heard here, it wouldn't go around the globe. Do you understand? You've got a ministry around the globe as a result of all that's going on here. So I think we need to let our team back there know again how much we appreciate them. So praise God for you guys. I appreciate it more than I can say. And then last night, many of you are not aware of everything that was going on, but I'll tell you what, the security team here at Calvary just did a stellar job. And I'll tell you this, as someone who's preached 3 times under a massive tent on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., where we had to have our own security, had to put together a security team. We had an incident very similar, very, very dramatically similar to what happened last night. And because it was handled so well, most of you didn't even know what went on unless you asked afterwards. But I was standing up preaching and watched our head of security come in on a row over about this side and lean forward and motion for a gentleman to come out with him. And the man got up and followed him out. And when he got outside the tent, I saw Secret Service agents from the White House pounce on that guy and take him to the ground. Now, I'm pretty good at keeping my thoughts and everything together, but I'm watching that, trying to keep my mind on my sermon, going, what in the world is going on back there? Well, by the time the service was over, a note came up to me on the front, up on the platform, and said, keep everybody under the tent and for just a few more minutes. And then Mike White, our head of security, former Special Forces guy, one of these guys, jump over the side of a building on a tether line with weapons in both hands and crash through a window. He got saved in one of our meetings, and he said, Preacher, what can I do for you? I said, I want you to head up our security in D.C. And boy, he did an awesome job. And we had no trouble recruiting guys to come be a part of Mike White's security team, because he's a man's man, but just has a tough hide, but a tender heart. Loves the Lord. But anyway, after the service, he told me what was going on. Very, very similar, almost identical to what happened or could have happened here last night. And thank the Lord, it was all dealt with in a good way. And you hate to have to do things like that, but you have to from time to time. And so I just want to say to the security team, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you so much. You know security is done right when it's sufficient for the task, but you really don't even know they're there. And I couldn't pick out who any of the security guys are. I really couldn't. They're just kind of low-key, but they're there and they're doing their job. Can I hear an amen? And so I thank God for that. By the way, I was told, I took a class in college, as I invite you to take your Bible and turn to the book of Revelation, chapter number 17. Took a class in college called American Public Address, Pastor. It was an amazing class. And we studied the great speeches of the past, but in that class, everybody that had ever taken it would spread the word around the campus that at some point the teacher's going to do this to you. She's not going to tell you when it's going to happen. You're not going to know when it's going to happen, but she'll set it up with other students in the class. But there's going to be an interruption while you're up speaking, and every person in the class at some point while they're giving a speech over the course of that semester is going to be interrupted by something happening. For example, somebody down on the front row may pretend to lose a contact lens, get out of their chair, or be scurrying around trying to find it, recruiting other people in the class to try to help them find it, and you up front while you're speaking have to deal with that. Somebody toward the back may pretend to have a heart attack and pass out, and you up front have to deal with that, just training you how to handle interruptions. Well, anyway, the teacher had told us this: if it's in the very back of the room and most everybody has not noticed it, then don't draw a lot of attention to it, by pointing it out. Just say something, move on. And that's good advice. Can I hear an amen? I was in a church years ago as a young man, and I know the guy that was the pastor. He had never had the benefit of a college class like that. In fact, he didn't have any benefit of college education at all, but he had a lot of wisdom from the Lord. And preacher, I'm not making this up. I was 14 years old. I'll never forget it. He started preaching that night. In the early part of the sermon, a fly had been flying all around his face, and he'd shoot it away a couple of times, and it had disappeared for the early part of the service. And I don't remember what he was saying, but I do remember this. It was maybe halfway through the sermon, and he had his mouth wide open, the pastor did, making some point, and that fly decided to reappear. And like a plane going into a hangar, it flew inside his mouth, and everybody in there saw it. Now, preacher, you can't pretend that didn't happen, okay? You've got to say something about it, right? This man had never had the benefit of a class like I had, but in his wisdom and his inimitable North Carolina accent, I'll never forget what he said. He just swallowed real hard and got him down. And then he looked out at all of us and he said this, well, he was a stranger and I took him in. And everybody laughed, got it out of their system. Well, I mean, Pastor didn't get that quite out of his, but anyway, everybody else got the laughter out of their system and went on with the service. But last night, it was amazing to me, just amazing from up here to watch the skill and the wisdom and the way everything was handled. And so, listen, if you're a member of Calvary Baptist Church, I hope you understand how blessed you are. On multiple levels, you are just richly blessed. And your pastor loves you. And as a shepherd, he's committed, as he said last night. Boy, I was hanging on every word because I know the pastor friends of mine around the country that think like your pastor thinks. And I'm preaching for just wonderful men right now. And I mean that. And Pastor, you're one of them. But I know my pastor friends that really love their congregation and love their flock and take it seriously. Your protection, not just your spiritual protection, but your physical protection. They take it very, very seriously. So I was hanging on every word and appreciating everything Pastor Steve had to say last night, that we're committed to keeping you safe. Do you know how thankful you ought to be for that? Because we're living in a crazy world, aren't we? Well, you know, Brother Dave, nothing like that ever happened out in Union Grove. Yeah, that's what they thought down there in that isolated church in Texas too, didn't they? Texas, think about that. A guy walked in with an automatic weapon. And in Texas, of all places, I know Texans, they love liberty. They get the threat. But they were so far out, they thought, it'll never happen here, but it did. And somebody outside the church, the only one with a weapon that day, had to take down the shooter with the same type weapon he carried into the auditorium. Don't tell me that a good guy with a gun won't stop a bad guy with a gun. It sure will. It sure will. And armed security, well-trained security. It's unfortunate, but we live in a world where it's absolutely essential. And you ought to be so thankful that you have a pastor and a security team that are committed to keeping you safe. And I don't mind telling you this, as a preacher who's a guest, because of the nature of what we're involved in and being on the radio and all kinds of things. As I told you last night, my wife said, honey, you're direct. And I said, well, do you want me to back away? I wasn't going to, even if she said yes. But anyway, I just said, she said, no, not at all. But she said, can we get a security system around our house? I said, we can do that. So we have an electronic security system, and we have a dog named Speck as well. And some of you that follow me online have seen Speck, and he's a gentle giant. But man, you do something to Mama, and he'll come out of his cage. And he'll defend Mama. Now we got another dog, looks just like him, that is a rescue, and his name is Spark. How about that? Speck and Spark. They're the ones that defend our property. And if a strange motor shows up, a car they don't recognize drives in the driveway, they'll bark to high heaven and let Mama know and let me know somebody's there that probably is unfamiliar. But you ought to be thankful. You ought to be so thankful. And I know as a guest preacher, understanding the climate in which we live, it's unfortunate, but it's necessary. And I appreciate so much the security team right here at Calvary Baptist. Guys, I love you. I cannot tell you, don't even know who all of you are, but I'm so thankful for you, and I appreciate you more than I can say. Revelation chapter number 17. Revelation chapter number 17. Down through the years, folk, and certainly now more than ever, I've been asked this question perhaps more than anything else, and that is this: is America in Bible prophecy? Now, to answer that question, if you were to say, is America by name in Bible prophecy, the answer would be no. You say, well, Brother Dave, what about this? And I've been asked this many, many times. There's a passage in the Old Testament, there's a passage also in the New Testament that mentions an eagle. Is the eagle the United States of America? Can I tell you, to believe that is horrible exegesis of the Scripture. The eagle in the Old Testament, the eagle in the New Testament has nothing whatsoever to do with the United States of America. Is everybody with me? However, is the United States referred to some other way? Not by name, but are we referred to some other way? You say, preacher, What are you referring to? What are you talking about? Well, I want to take you to Revelation 17 because there's an entity mentioned in Revelation 17 and Revelation 18 that has a very unique name. We're going to get to the name of this entity in just a moment. But I want to begin reading at Revelation 17. Let your eyes rest, if you would, please, on verse number 1, where, inspired by the Holy Spirit of God, the Apostle John writes these words. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials. Can I have you pause and look up at me for just a moment? The word vial in Revelation 17:1 means bowl. There's an earlier place in the book of Revelation, not far removed from chapter 17, where seven vials of judgment, seven bowls of judgment are poured out on the earth. Does anybody remember this? Well, this is one of the angels that had those seven bowls. We think vial like a little test tube vial. That's not what it is. It's a bowl. And these bowls or vials of judgment were poured out on the earth. John said it was the same angel that did that I saw come to me. Look again at Revelation 17 verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither. John, come here, I want to show you something. And I will show unto thee the judgment of the great, would you say the next word out loud? The great what? Literally, the great harlot that sitteth, look at the rest of verse 1, that sitteth upon many waters, with whom, in other words, this harlot entity, whoever she is, whatever she represents, with whom the kings of the earth have committed, would you say the next word out loud? They've committed what? Fornication. Brother Dave, is that literal physical fornication? Is that what's being talked about here? Hang on, I'm going to answer that in just a moment. With whom, look again at verse 2, the kings of the earth, or literally, verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, watch this, and the inhabitants of the earth, that is the occupants, the citizens of the earth, have been made drunk with the wine of her, this harlot entity's fornication. Again, the question you ought to be asking is it literal physical fornication? I'm going to answer that in just a moment. Look at verse number 3. So he carried me away, the angel that had one of the seven bowls of judgment. He carried me away into the wilderness, and I saw a woman. Here is the harlot entity that John sees. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, folk, look up at me. Do you remember earlier in the week I talked to you about the Antichrist, his rise, his resistance, and his religion? And this 7-headed, 10-horned beast imagery is used all the way back in the book of Daniel. How many of you remember this? It's repeated here in the book of Revelation. We told you the night I preached on that topic that the 7-headed, 10-horned beast was the kingdom of the Antichrist. Is everybody with me? Well, here it is. It's mentioned again right here. I want you to watch verse 3 again. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. I saw a woman, it's the harlot entity. She's sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Look at verse number 4. And the woman, the harlot entity, was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her what? Would you say the word again? Literal physical fornication. Hang on. Going to answer that in just a moment. Look at verse number 5. And upon her forehead, upon the forehead of this harlot entity was a name written. Now, folks, it's vitally important to understand this. The rest of verse 5 is her name. It is a long name. By the way, my grandfather, Pastor, grew up when he was just a young man. He lived in a 3-story house in Cherryville, North Carolina. I know Cherryville cannot be that far from here, but it was a 3-story house. It was called the Old George Place. They were very wealthy. My great-grandfather lost everything in the stock market crash in 1929, and they had nothing. They had 14 servants that at one time worked for them. And preacher, what's interesting, the servant's family name was the Brooks family. I'd never heard anything like this, but my grandfather said every child had 4 names. Surname or the family name, Brooks, but they all had 3 names after that. For example, Walter Benjamin Hubert Brooks. One of the girls, Ida Nida Pearlie Lee Brooks. 14 kids, if you give them all 4 names, you're going to run out of names pretty quick. Do you know the last child they told me? His name was DKLB. I said, Papa, what did that stand for? He said, it didn't stand for anything. That was his name, DKLB. They'd run out of names, so they gave him initials. Is everybody with me? Long names. Are you understanding? I want you to understand I've never seen a longer name than this one. This harlot entity's full name in verse 5 is this. Would you watch it? Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. That is her entire name. So for sake of time tonight, so that we don't get out of here at 10 o'clock, I'm going to abbreviate her name from here on out. I'm not going to use the entire name. I'm just going to call her Mystery Babylon. Is everybody okay with that? The question I have is this. Who is Mystery Babylon? Preacher, it's vitally important we understand this is not literal Babylon. Babylon is an ancient city that existed in what is now modern-day Iraq. It was actually a location. This is not literal Babylon. The Bible identifies this harlot entity as mystery. Literally, it means figurative. Not literal, but figurative Babylon. The question I have is this. Is it possible that this figurative Mystery Babylon entity is the United States of America? You say, preacher, why in the world would you even think that? Why would you even pose the question? Don't you know that most Bible scholars have taught, and yes, they have. I was taught this by my own father. I was taught this in Bible college and seminary. I'm not saying I know more than anybody else. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but I'm just trying to say this. Folk, we have a little bit of an advantage from this perspective, looking at things that maybe some of our forebears did not. Does everybody understand what I'm trying to say? Do you know we have an advantage? Do you know Revelation 13 says there are going to be two witnesses that go out on the earth during the tribulation, and they preach the gospel, and the world's going to get upset with them, and they're going to kill them, and their dead bodies are going to lie in the streets of Jerusalem. Listen to the rest of it. And the eyes of the world are going to see their dead corpses lying in the city of Jerusalem for 3 days. Can you imagine 100 years ago a preacher reading that? The eyes of the world? Now, I can imagine, the majority of the occupants of the city of Jerusalem may be seeing their dead bodies lie in the streets of Jerusalem. But the eyes of the world, that's impossible. And it was 100 years ago. But we got a leg up right now. Listen, folk, with this thing I've got right here on the front row that you've got in your pocket or in your lap called a cell phone, people can watch it as it occurs, can't they? Yeah, the eyes of the world are going to see those guys. And by the way, what amazes me is on the third day, they're going to come back to life and stand up. Can you see a CNN reporter reporting on that? And his camera guy's got, and he's talking about these two guys lying in the street behind him, and all of a sudden they stand up and begin going to heaven, and the cameraman's going behind you. You talk about a ratings bonanza, that's going to be it, right? What I'm trying to say is we have a little bit of an advantage, maybe over some of our brethren from years back. The question I want to pose tonight and endeavor to answer is this. Is Mystery Babylon the United States of America? Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the traditional interpretation for decades on end has been this, that Mystery Babylon is Rome. Mystery Babylon is Rome. I want to just for a few minutes contest that just a moment and pose the question and endeavor to answer it. Is it not Rome? Is it the United States? Well, again, Brother Dave, why would you pose the question? 3 reasons, and I'm going to give you all 3 of them right now. Number 1, I want you to see Mystery Babylon's description. Her description. If you're taking notes, just write that down. Her, Mystery Babylon's description. I want you to notice how she's described here in Revelation 17 and in Revelation 18. Her description. You say, preacher, what do you mean? Again, look at Revelation 17, verse 1. Pardon me for going back and reading through it, but I want to show you something. I want you to see her, Mystery Babylon's description. Revelation 17, 1 says this, and there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials or the 7 bowls, talked with me, saying, hey, John, come here. I want to show unto thee the judgment of the great, what's the word again? Say it out loud. Whore, the great harlot, Mystery Babylon. Here comes the first descriptive phrase, that sitteth upon many waters. Preacher, whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, this description of her is not at the very end of the tribulation, but it's almost at the very end of the tribulation, and she is seen as sitting on many waters. Now, folk, again, I'm a word nut. I love words. The word on in English is a Greek term that means to sit across, to sit astride, To sit on top of. Some people would say great synonym would be this: she's made up of many waters. Well, the obvious question I have, and the question you should have, is this: what do the many waters represent? What are the many waters? Did you know the Bible is its own best interpreter? Can I hear an amen? Look at Revelation 17, verse 15, because we find out what the many waters are. It's spelled out right here in the Bible. Look at Revelation 17, 15. And he, John says, he, the angel, saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore, where the harlot entity, where Mystery Babylon sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations. The word nations there is the Greek word ethnos, ethnicities, and tongues or languages. In other words, in the last days, Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, whatever she represents, America or otherwise, she is seen sitting on top of. She's seen sitting astride, across. Some would say made up of, watch this, a multiplicity of people groups. By the way, let me ask you a question. America's been called for decades what kind of a pot? We've been called a what? Melting pot, because we're made up of a multiplicity of people groups, languages, ethnicities. Everybody with me? Well, Brother Dave, does this in and of itself prove that Mystery Babylon is America? No, it does not. But it is interesting, isn't it? She's seen sitting, whoever she is, whatever she represents, made up of, some would say, of a multiplicity of people groups. That is descriptive phrase number one. I want you to see a second description of Mystery Babylon. Look at verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, that is, the angel did. And John says, and I saw a woman, here she is, the harlot entity. I saw a woman sit upon a, watch this, she's not just sitting on waters, she's sitting on a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So preacher, she's not only seen sitting on many waters, she's also seen sitting on the back of a scarlet-colored beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. Let me ask you a question. What is the name of this road out here, front of the church? That's right, that's what the GPS lady told me. She told me that every night. By the way, do anybody know if you can get GPS instructions in a man's voice so it's not a woman always telling me what? I'm joking. I'm just joking. Okay. Indian Hill Road. Okay, let's say tonight after the service we're walking out to the foyer and going to go out and get in our respective cars, and coming from Indian Hill Road down here, going this way up this direction on Indian Hill Road is a wild African lion. If you saw that, would you not think that's a tad odd? Well, why would that be odd, Brother Dave? Because African lions are not native to this part of North Carolina. In fact, they're not native to North Carolina at all. They're not even native to the United States of America. So if you saw a wild African lion on Indian Hill Road going this direction, you ought to think that's a tad odd. But if on the back of that wild African lion you saw a beautiful woman, and she's just riding on the back of the lion's not trying to buck her off, it's not trying to turn around and bite her, and she looks toward the church, and some people, preacher, call it the Disney wave or the parade wave or the float wave. She's just waving at us. She's just riding in what I'm going to call unnatural coziness on the back of a wild African lion. If you saw that tonight, would you think that's not just a tad odd, that's a lot odd? Can I hear an amen? What I'm trying to tell you is this: whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, America or otherwise, preacher, she is seen in the last days, toward the end of the tribulation, riding in unnatural coziness on the back of a 7-headed, 10-horned beast, which is the kingdom of Antichrist. So whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, she has an unnaturally cozy relationship with the empire of the Antichrist in the last days. Is everybody listening to me? If the one world religion of the last days is not Rome, but as I preached a couple of nights ago, happens to be Islam, preacher, this could explain a lot. If Mystery Babylon is America. You say, preacher, help me understand what you mean by that. Folk, have you noticed? Listen, America's war with Islam did not start on 9/11/01. We don't know our history. America's war with Islam started in the 1740s with a thing called the Barbary Wars. The Barbary pirates were Islamic. And you know what they did through our first two presidents, George Washington and John Adams? You know what they did? Anytime our ships were going to pick up trade supplies or carry them to sell elsewhere, they went through the straits. The Muslims would hold our ships ransom, preacher, until we paid them a ransom. They were the Barbary pirates. When we got our third president, Thomas Jefferson, he said, we're not doing that anymore. Can I hear an amen? We're not doing that. We're not paying a ransom. Here's the phrase he used, to the Mohammedans. The Mohammedans is what he called them. And he said this, and folk, we have not listened to Mr. Jefferson's solemn warning. He said, beware the Mohammedans. They're dangerous. No, our war with Islam didn't start in 2001. It started in 1740. But folks, it went to a whole nother level after 9/11, didn't it? Folks, something's going on when we have, it seems like, in our Congress, and we now have 4 Muslims serving in Congress. Folk, I'm sorry. I know this is not politically correct, but it is constitutionally correct. You cannot lay your hand on a Quran and swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Those two things are absolutely polar opposite. They are antithetical. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Their commitment is not to the United States. It's to the overthrow of the United States. And yet they'll practice a thing called taqiyya. That is, if you're Muslim, you can lie to a non-Muslim if it will advance the cause of Islam. And they lie all the time. Islam is a religion of peace. In fact, they'll say this, the word Islam means peace. No, it does not. The word Islam means submission, and it's a forced submission. Are you listening to me? Well, preacher, you must hate the Muslims. Oh, no. If you think that's what's going on in my heart, you don't know me. I hate the ideology. It's out of the pit of hell. But I love the Muslims because they've been deceived. And they need Jesus. And they need to have some Christians who love them enough and venture out in courage and faith enough to share Jesus with them and love them to the Savior. Can I hear an amen? But the ideology of Islam is out of the pit of hell. Preacher, in America right now, we got a love affair with Islam. You can demean Christianity, put Christianity down, talk about Christians. That clip you played of Glenn Beck saying they're going after, and they are. They're going after us. By the way, folks, you need to be aware of this. Look, any of you have Duke Energy as your power source, Duke Energy? You ought to look. You ought to look on your bill. You ought to look and see if at the bottom of your bill, like it is on mine, I'm assuming yours is the same way, they have how much I've spent on electricity the past 30 days. They say, here's what your neighbors have spent. You know what they're doing? They're giving you what's now called an ESG score. Everybody know what a credit score is? Credit score will determine how much you can borrow. It'll determine a lot of other things. You're also being given right now, every American is an ESG score. E stands for environmental, S stands for social, and G stands for governance. You say, what does that mean? How do I get my ESG score demeaned or accelerated? If you post on Facebook that you love a border to protect the United States southern and northern borders, if you believe in religious liberty, man, if you're pro-Second Amendment, your ESG score is really going to drop, and they're going to start punishing us because of a low ESG score. Is everybody listening to what I'm saying? I've got probably a 0 ESG score because of what I post on Facebook, okay? Because I am not politically correct. By the way, I'm tired of trying to be politically correct. In love, I want to be biblically correct. It matters little to me about being politically correct. But folk, you're being given an ESG score. By the way, they've just been talking about it on Fox News. You won't get a loan if you got a problem on Facebook. By the way, you're looking at a jailbird. I've been in jail so many times, Facebook jail. Preacher, I'm surprised I'm out right now. ESG. It's a way to go after conservative Christians. But you know what? You can demean Christianity. Heaven help you if you say anything about Islam, they come after you. Everybody know what I'm talking about? By the way, not far from Statesville, between Statesville and Hickory, there is a billboard that has, I drove by it, preacher, it's 3-second sight time at max, closer to 2-second sight time. In other words, as you're driving by at 65 miles an hour, the only amount of time you'll see it is 1001, 1002, and then you don't see it anymore. We put a billboard up out there that said, why support a travel ban? Because 19 Muslim immigrants killed 2,977 Americans on 9/11/01. Now I want to ask you a question. Is there anything untruthful about that? You say, preacher, they weren't immigrants. Well, we didn't know they were just going to be here 5 months, 6 months, and then take their own lives in a dastardly attempt to take out America. We assumed what they'd communicated were going to come and stay here. We're immigrating here. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? And they killed 2,977 Americans. So there's certain countries that ought not be allowed just unmitigated, the people of them, unmitigated access across our borders. That's just common sense. That's not hateful. By the way, my wife is Hispanic. She has beautiful olive skin. She has dark eyes. She has black hair. She's gorgeous. Do you know her family immigrated here from Mexico and they did it the right way? They took the test. They learned history. They did everything. It is an affront to them to allow unmitigated access of people coming here illegally when they and many millions of others did it the right way. Can I hear an amen? Whew, I feel better. What I'm trying to help you understand, folks, is this. Something's going on in our country. Islam is defended at every turn, while Christianity is condemned. Preacher, it could explain a lot if Mystery Babylon is America. And in the last days after the rapture, toward the end of the tribulation, the United States is this harlot entity riding an unnatural coziness on the back of Antichrist empire, the world religion of which will be Islam. Is everybody listening to what I'm saying? Well, preacher, does this prove Mystery Babylon inconclusively or conclusively, rather, is the United States of America? No. But it's interesting. Her description, number 2, I want you to write this down. Not only her description, number 2, her, Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, whatever she represents, America or otherwise, her debauchery. Not only her description, number 2, her debauchery. You say, preacher, what does that mean? Debauchery is a fancy word for means her extreme wickedness. Her extreme wickedness. Her debauchery. Look at Revelation 18, verse 1. I want you to see Mystery Babylon's extreme wickedness, her debauchery. Verse 1 of Revelation 18 says, and after these things, this is John again, inspired by the Holy Spirit to write, after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Look at verse 2. And he, the angel, cried mightily with a strong voice, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. Now, folk, look up at me for just a minute. The fact that it's mentioned twice that Babylon falls, every Bible scholar concurs. I think they're 100% correct. It says Babylon is fallen, is fallen. It means she falls quickly and she falls thoroughly. Is everybody with me? Man, when she goes down quick. And she goes down completely. Babylon the Great is fallen. Look at the middle of verse 2. And is become a habitation or the habitation of, would you say the next word out loud? The habitation of what? Literally the word devils there means demons. In the last days toward the end of the tribulation, whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, America or otherwise, she is the habitation. She is overrun with demonic activity. Watch the rest of it. She's become the habitation of demons, and the hold, the word hold means the cage of every foul spirit, or it means cave actually, the word hold, a cave of every foul spirit, watch the last phrase, and a cage of every unclean and hateful, what's the last word? Look up at me for just a minute. Anybody in here a dog owner like we are? All right, hold your hands up if you're a dog owner. Okay. Awesome. By the way, Harry Truman, didn't agree with everything. Harry, I wasn't even alive, when he was president, but I've read a lot about him. Didn't agree with every position. But I'll tell you what, in 1948, when Israel became a nation again, do you know the first world leader to recognize Israel as a state again, as a nation, was the President of the United States, Harry S. Truman? You say, cussing Harry Truman recognized Israel, the first world leader to do it? Yeah, he did it within 10 minutes of Israel declaring themselves to be a state again. Can I hear an amen? By the way, there's a backstory I wish I had time to tell you. Harry Truman grew up in Missouri in a Sunday school class. He had heard Genesis 12:3 that says, I will bless those that bless you, Israel. I'll curse those that curse you. And he understood, if I don't stand for Israel, it'll cost not just me, it'll cost my country, America, the one I'm president over. It'll cost them dearly. And so he did right, even though he had his entire cabinet threatening to resign if he acknowledged Israel. Wow. Another reason I like Harry Truman is this. Harry Truman had a lot of wisdom. He said, if you want a friend in D.C., get a dog. That's true, preacher. I mean, there's people I've thought were my friends that have turned their back on me when push came to shove in D.C. But you know what? Old Specs never turned his back on me. You know, when I get home tonight, you know what he's going to be doing? And I'm sorry to tell you this, but if we let him, you know what he does at night? He gets on the bed and he turns around and around and then he plops down, forgive me, and he does this with his head. He gets right over next to me. Not trying to get cozy, okay? Please don't start a rumor, okay? That dog snuggles with dad and mom. Can I hear an amen? If you want a friend in D.C., get a dog. Dog owners, dog lovers, understand that. Now, here's the $64,000 question. Anybody in here a current or former bird owner? Brother, you don't look like the bird owner type. Long time ago, all right. And it was your wife that got it, probably, right?
It belonged to my mother at that time.
Blame it on mom, blame it on mom. Yeah, they all do that. Okay. Do you mind me asking, what was the bird's name?
One was Buddy, and he was a cockatiel.
Okay. You had two of them?
There was two.
One wasn't enough?
No,
Okay, all right, all right.
tastes like chicken.
He said, tastes like chicken. Cockatiel, the other white meat, right? That's what it is. Okay, all right. Now, listen, bird owners, am I speaking truth? If you purchase a bird, you cannot let it out of the house, right? Because it'll fly away. You got to keep it in the house. Am I speaking truth, bird owners? If you have a bird, though, you got to keep it in the house, but you cannot let it fly loose in the house. Got to have it in a cage, right? Am I speaking truth, bird? Some of the non-bird owners will go, well, why would you have to keep it in a cage? Bird owners, is this not true? You have to keep it in a cage because birds, shall we say, do stuff. They just do stuff, right? So you got to keep them in a cage. You got to put newspaper or something on the bottom of the cage, and you have to change that newspaper out a couple of times a day. Well, Brother Dave, why would you have to do it a couple of times a day? Because birds do stuff, right? I want you to understand something. Whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, America or somebody else, in the last days, preacher, she becomes the cage of every unclean and hateful, would you say the word again? What does that mean, preacher? It's a graphic illustration. In other words, by the time you get to the end of the tribulation, which is where Revelation 17 and 18 occurs, whoever Mystery Babylon is, whether it's America or somebody else, she is so debauched, so evil, so wicked. She looks like the untouched, uncleaned bottom of a bird cage. Are you with me? She is that evil. Forgive me. I love my country, but this sounds just like us. Preacher, we have become dominated by evil.
You're right.
Do you know during the COVID years, people had a lot of time at home? Preacher, I hate even to bring this up, but people had a lot of time at home during those COVID months, especially the early months. Do you know everything? All the businesses went down, but one business did not. Prior to COVID, it was making almost $14 billion a year. It shot way up past that during the COVID years because of all the time. Men and women, tragically, had time at home. It's called the pornography trade. Folks, do you understand? America is the chief purveyor. We're the one that make that stuff, and we send it, we export it all over the globe. This sounds just like us. A cage of every unclean and hateful bird. We're talking about the debauchery, the extreme wickedness of Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, whatever she represents. By the way, it doesn't end there. Look at verse number 3. For all nations, Revelation 18:3, for all nations. By the way, the word nations there is again the word ethnos. All ethnic groups have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her, Mystery Babylon's. What's the word again? Her what? Again, Brother Dave, is that literal physical fornication? Hang on. Look at the rest of it. All nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Watch this, and the kings of the earth have committed what with her? Again, Brother Dave, literal physical fornication? Hang on. The kings of the earth, world leaders, whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, the kings of the earth, world leaders have committed fornication with her. Now we have some additional information about to show up. And the merchants of the earth. The word merchants means the businessmen of the earth. Look what they've done with Mystery Babylon. The merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her, Mystery Babylon's. Would you say the next word out loud in the King James? Her what? Delicacies. The word delicacies literally in Greek means her sensualities. Preacher, whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, in the last days she's become so sensual, so evil, that the businessmen of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her sensuality. Wow. Sounds to me just like us. I want to answer the question, is the fornication that's been repeatedly mentioned here, is it literal physical fornication? It is not. It is not physical fornication. Now, I'm not trying to be graphic or gross. I know we've got some younger folks here, but I want you to look up at me. You do know what fornication is. You say, of course, Brother Dave, I know what it is. I'm not talking about the physical act. I'm talking about the motivation behind it. Do you know what the motivation for fornication is? Here's a guy who works at a furniture plant in Hudson or Lenore, North Carolina. He's got a wedding ring on the fourth finger of his left hand, which means at some point he stood at a marriage altar and he's made a commitment to his bride and he's made this promise, I will keep myself only to you so long as we both shall live. Can I hear an amen right there? But he works in a furniture plant with a woman who may be in the front office. She's got a wedding ring on the fourth finger of her left hand, which means at some point, either at a justice of the peace or at a church altar, she's made the same commitment to her husband. I will keep myself only to you so long as we both shall live. But these two people married to other people work together. Pastor, do you know how many times I've been told this story? In 39 years of traveling the world? You know what the motivation for fornication is? This guy abandons his commitment to his bride. This woman abandons her commitments to her husband. And for a few moments of fleeting pleasure, he uses her and she uses him to both get what they want. That's the motivation. I want you to understand, the kings of the earth, world leaders, and the businessmen of the earth are not committing literal physical fornication with Mystery Babylon, whoever she is. Preacher, what they're committing is economic fornication. They're using her to get what they want, and she's using them to get what she wants. Is everybody with me? Forgive me. This sounds just like America. You know what's God in America right now? This. Everybody almost in America has a price. I can promise you this. 20 years of working on Capitol Hill. Preacher, the best politician, the guy that comes there with a great resume, he's committed to doing right initially. They all seem to have a price. Well, I want to go on record tonight. 63 years old, Dave Kistler is not for sale. Amen. At any price. That's why I told your pastor, I have never asked for a penny to go anywhere, and I'm never going to. Why, Brother Dave? Because my dad would come out of the grave and get me if I did otherwise. You say, what does that mean? He said, son, if you're going to preach faith, live that way. If you're going to preach faith, be an embodiment of that. Don't ask for anything and watch God show up. As you can tell, I haven't missed too many meals. God's an awesome God, isn't He? He is my provider. He is my defender. He is my protector. He is my Savior. He is my Master. He is my Lord. And He's my soon coming King. I am not for sale. Well, preacher, if you'll just hedge and not talk about that, have people told you this? Yes, they have. Just don't be that adamant about that, and we'll make sure you've got this. I'm sorry. I'm going to put my head on a pillow at night, and I'm going to sleep peacefully, and I'm not going to be indebted to any man. I'm indebted to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. See, America, everybody's on the take. So the fornication here is economic fornication. Kings of the earth, businessmen, using Mystery Babylon, her using them both to get what they want. By the way, folk, I have to say this. This is encapsulated in a family, multiple families, but one of them is very prominent right now. And I'm sorry, if this offends you, if you'll come to me after the service and apologize for your being offended, I'll forgive you. I promise I will. But the Biden family is a crime syndicate. They're a crime syndicate. Forgive me, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be political. Raid the 45th president's home, he's a private citizen now, and go after boxes. It's in his purview as president to do with that what he wants. He can declassify anything with a snap of a finger. There's a law in the books that says he can do it. And Hunter Biden have a laptop filled with compromising stuff with China and Ukraine. And he's still walking the streets. Are you kidding me? And Hillary Clinton, don't get me started. Preacher, if you and I had our own private server and we worked for the government, we'd be under the jail and wouldn't be out the rest of our lives. How come she gets by with it? Man, we got a two-tiered justice system in this country, don't we? I don't care if you got a D or R after your name. If you do wrong, you ought to have to pay the price the American people has to pay. Makes me so mad. Do you tell the Republicans this? Yes, I do. If you're coming to Dave Kistler looking for a pat on the back, that you guys get to skate when it comes to doing wrong, you're not going to find that from Dave. No, I'm sorry. D or R. I love you all the same. I want to see all of you saved. But the fact of the matter is this, if I'm going to be punished for doing wrong, if my friends at Calvary Baptist Union Grove get punished for doing wrong, you guys ought to face the same consequence. That's common sense, as well as being Bible and being the law. Whew, I didn't plan on saying any of that, Pastor. But man, do I feel like my load's lighter. You guys are awesome. I love you. Thank you for putting up with my brief rant. My ESG score just dropped, though, preacher. We're talking about Mystery Babylon's debauchery. I want you to look at verse 5 of Revelation 18. Now, folks, stay with me. Stay with me. I want you to see this. For her sins, whose sins? Mystery Babylon's sins. Whoever she is, whatever she represents, whether she's America or somebody else, her sins have reached unto heaven. And God hath remembered her iniquities. Now watch carefully verse 6. Reward unto her even as she rewarded you. And double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she has filled, fill to her double. In other words, whatever she's done, double it up back to her in punishment. Are you listening? Wow. Why does God say do that to Mystery Babylon, whoever she is? Look at verse 7. Here's why. How much she hath glorified, say it out loud, who? Herself. And lived how? The word deliciously, you need to put this somewhere in the margin. The word deliciously in Greek means in exorbitant luxury. Whoever Mystery Babylon is, whatever she represents, she's lived in exorbitant luxury. Folk, that's us to a T. Preacher, I've been all over the globe. I love every place I go. In fact, when I went to Africa the first time, I didn't want to come home. When I went to England the first time, I didn't want to come home. I fell in love with the people. Those precious little African children whose moms and dads are dying of AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. And these little kids are beautiful, and they're in the orphanages. And my wife and our youngest daughter went and rocked these little kids and just played with them and held them and hugged them. Some of them have AIDS, preacher, because they got it from their mom and dad. But they need the love of Jesus. I wanted to adopt every one of them, bring them back, or stay. Listen to me, friends. America is in trouble. How much she hath glorified herself and lived in exorbitant luxury. The rest of the world doesn't live like we live, folks. They don't wear the clothes we wear. They don't live in the houses we live in. They don't drive the automobiles we drive. They don't have nice church buildings like this. In Africa, their church floors are dirt or concrete, bare concrete, dusty as it can possibly be, animals walking in and out. The rest of the world's not like us. We've had it made, haven't we? Look again in verse 7. How much she hath glorified herself, Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, America or otherwise, and lived deliciously in exorbitant luxury. Now watch the rest of verse 7. So much torment and sorrow give her. Why give her so much torment and sorrow? Here's why. Look at the next phrase. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen. Now look up at me for a minute. Preacher, right there, that phrase right there is a key reason why many Bible scholars said, I know who Mystery Babylon is. Because of the phrase, I sit a queen. It's Rome. Because, see, in Roman doctrine, Mary is called the Queen of Heaven. So when Mystery Babylon says, I sit a queen, many a Bible scholar said, I know who this is. It's Rome. Because in Roman theology, Roman Catholic theology, Mary is called the Queen of Heaven. Can I be honest with you, folks? That phrase, I sit a queen, has nothing to do with Roman Catholic doctrine. Nothing. Look at the rest of Mystery Babylon's statement. It doesn't stop with I sit a queen. It says, I sit a queen and am no widow. Preacher, there's a contrast being drawn between being a queen in those days versus being a widow in those days. Do you understand? In those days, if you were a widow, you were dependent on other people to take care of you. Mystery Babylon is saying, that's not me. I'm the antithesis. I don't need anybody to do anything for me. I'm a queen. And look at the last phrase of that verse. And shall never see any sorrow. Man, I've got the world by the tail on a downhill run. I'm not dependent on anybody. I got it made, and I'll never see any sorrow. This is a statement of extreme arrogance. Has nothing to do with Mary and Roman Catholic. It's a statement by Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, of incredible arrogance. Forgive me, folks. That sounds just like us. Now, please don't misunderstand where I'm going. I love the United States. I love that flag. By the way, Pastor, proudly she waves Old Glory over the land of the free. Promise of hope and freedom, symbol of liberty. Red, white, and blue are her colors, colors both brilliant and clear, colors with far deeper meaning than that at first may appear. Red is for blood of patriots who have died to free us. White is for justice and government of law. Blue is for honor and faith in all we do. This is my flag. This is Old Glory. The red, white, and blue. And you know what? Every time she passes and the anthem as a tribute to her is sung, I put my hand over my heart and I stand at attention. Something wrong with you if you don't have the same response. I want you to understand I love America. But I also have to be honest, America's in trouble. Because we've become highly arrogant. Pastor, in my 20 trips plus to the country of England, it's interesting. I love the British people. I love them. By the way, you know the steering wheel is on the right-hand side of the British cars. You drive on the right-hand side of the road. So it means when you go through a McDonald's drive-through, and I did one time drive in one of those British cars, you know, the order here, and you drive up, and it's on this side of the car, and I roll the window down and after place. In fact, when I placed my order, it was interesting. The lady said, when I said, do you have, I don't remember what it was. She said, we don't have any of those. I said, well, how about one of these? She said, we've got some of those. I said, kind of imitating her, well, then I will have one of those. When I pulled up to pay and get my food, she looked through and she said, you're not from around Trilderar. You're not from around here, are you? I said, no, ma'am, I'm not. What was your first clue? She said, your accent is a dead giveaway. I said, ma'am, with all due respect, I'm not the one with an accent. You are. I thought she's going to fall out the window laughing, so we became incredible friends. I love the British people. I love them. Do you know what they call us now over there? Those arrogant Yanks. Those arrogant Yanks. Very accurate. Man, we thought we'll recover from 9/11 because we're resilient and entrepreneurial. And you know what? We are both of those things. But if you think the reason we recovered from 9/11 is just because we're entrepreneurial and resilient, you've missed it. We recovered because God let us recover.
You're right. Yes, sir.
And you know what? I hear some of our leaders, and I know what sometimes they're trying to do. They're trying to encourage the American people. We can take on anything and recover. But it's, we'll do it. No, we won't. If God's not on our side, as Abraham Lincoln said, we don't do anything.
Right.
No, we've become, folks, I'm sorry, an arrogant lot. I said a queen and am no widow is a statement of extreme arrogance, and God said, I'm going to punish that arrogance. Because pride goes before destruction, haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 7, these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are abomination unto him. You know what the first one is? A prideful look. God hates pride, and America has forgotten the source of our blessing. That's why if we love America, the answer's in this room to the revival. We got to humble ourselves. Her debauchery, arrogant, immoral. Look, if you would please, at verse number 8 of Revelation 18. Now buckle in tight. From her description and her debauchery, and we're going to be done, I want you to see number 3, her destruction. Mystery Babylon's destruction. Now I want you to watch this. This is phenomenal. Revelation 18:8, her destruction. Therefore, anytime you see the word therefore, you need to know what it's there for. It's based on what was said in verse 7. Arrogance brings something. Therefore, look what God's going to do. Therefore shall her plagues come in. Would you say the next 2 words? In what? One day. Death, mourning, famine. Watch how she's going to be destroyed. She shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Now, folk, look at me for a minute. Again, imagine 100 years ago. Imagine 100 years ago a preacher preaching on this and going, this powerful entity, whoever Mystery Babylon is, this powerful entity, when she is judged and when she goes down to destruction, she's going down in one day. Can you imagine a preacher going, oh, whoa. From the description of this Mystery Babylon entity, whoever she is, she's obviously powerful and wealthy beyond description. How could she go down in one day? By the way, folk, all we have to do is look at what's going on right now between Russia and Ukraine. Preacher, I'm convinced, Vladimir Putin thought 5 days and we'll control the country. How many months are we into this thing now? 6 months? You know what he didn't count on? The fight of the Ukrainian people. See, folks, they've known communism and they've known freedom. And I'm here to tell you, they're not going back to communism. They'll die first. You know what the tragedy is in America? We've had freedom for so long, we've never known anything but.
You're right.
Preacher, A survey was just conducted. You know how many people said, if push came to shove and we had to defend our freedom, would you be willing to pick up a weapon yourself and defend your personal freedom and your nation's freedom? You know what percentage of Americans said they'd be willing to do that? 30%. God have mercy. Folk, the day may come where we have to defend our freedom. By the way, in the Declaration of Independence, our founders saw that because they understood the Bible and human nature. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these, not limited to these rights, but among the rights we've been given by God, are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, listen to this, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. That's us. We give them permission to govern. They are our employees. We are not their servants. They are not our masters. Can I hear an amen? Listen to the next phrase. Nobody knows this one. When any form of government becomes detrimental to those ends. What ends? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and establish in its place a new government predicated upon those principles and establish upon those things that shall them, the people, deem most likely to procure their happiness. Can I hear an amen? Amen. They're declaring independence from Great Britain. But they're saying if it ever comes again, it's the right of the people to abolish the old and establish something. Preacher, are you calling for an insurrection? Not on your life. And by the way, if January 6th of 2021 was an insurrection, it was the most poorly planned and poorly executed insurrection I've ever seen in my life. Preacher, you mean to tell me with 1.2 million people in Washington, D.C., if that were an insurrection, they wanted to take over the Capitol, nothing could have stopped them. Insurrection. These people will lie when the truth would be better to tell. Folk, what I'm trying to say is this. We need God in America again. Because of Mystery Babylon's debauchery, she's going down in one day. It's taken 6 months, and Russia still hadn't taken over Ukraine. So what could happen to this powerful entity, Mystery Babylon, whether it's America or anybody? What happens that she goes down in one day? I want you to look at verse 9. And the kings of the earth, who have, here it is again, who have committed fornication, economic fornication, and lived deliciously in exorbitant luxury with her, Mystery Babylon, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke, watch this, of her burning. So whatever happens to Mystery Babylon involves smoke, fire, and burning. Look at verse 10. Standing, that is, the kings of the earth, standing afar off for the fear of her torment. Now I want you to look up at me. I want to explain something to you. Pastor, what the motivation is, they're standing, the kings of the earth, at a great distance from Mystery Babylon for fear of her torment. In other words, she's going through something we won't know part of. And if we stay far enough away from her, we won't get caught up in it. What could they be trying to avoid? That if they get too close, they could get caught up in it. Look at verse 10. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city. Please watch this next phrase. For in one, what's the next word? Hour is thy judgment come. Folks, listen, Mystery Babylon, whether it's America or otherwise, when she goes down, she doesn't just go down in one day, she goes down in 1 hour of one day. Wow. Can I just tell you what my friends in the security apparatus are telling me, and I'm not betraying a secret. One of my friends is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Right now, what he does is he's in charge of all the checked baggage at every airport in America. When you go somewhere and you check a bag, he's responsible for that. Having that bag scanned, opening it up if they deem necessary to look through it, that's his domain. He's designed and oversees the system that checks checked bags. Do you know what he's told me he's scared to death of? He said, Dave, what we fear in the security apparatus is this. Somebody's going to ship a component from outside the United States to Charlotte, North Carolina. Somebody else going to ship another piece from outside the United States to St. Louis, Missouri. Somebody else going to ship another piece from outside the United States to Seattle, Washington. Somebody else will ship another piece to Atlanta, Georgia. And they have people in the United States called runners. And they'll get in an automobile and they'll drive to those cities I just named. They'll retrieve the individual pieces, bring them to a common location. And then they will put together from those individual components that have come from all over the world into different cities in America, they will assemble what's called a dirty bomb. And my friend said, Dave, here's the frightening thing. We live with this every day. That's why he said, I'm doing what I'm doing. He said, a dirty bomb can have a nuclear component to it. And he said, here's our fear, that somebody will assemble one of those. And he said, they can be small enough to fit in a decent-sized suitcase. And somebody carries one of those suitcases into the subway system in America's biggest city, New York, sets it down, walks off, and from blocks away takes their cell phone, dials a number that is attached to a device inside that suitcase, and they detonate a nuclear device. Preacher, that would create smoke and fire and burning. And that would cause people to say, if I can stay far enough away, I won't get caught in the radiation fallout. Is everybody with me? You say, Brother Dave, are you saying that's what it has to be? No. I want you to understand the Bible says, strong is the Lord God who judges Mystery Babylon. Do you know all God would have to do to take us down right now is just blind the eyes of a Secret Service agent, blind the eyes of a Department of Homeland Security person, just for a second or two, and something get through. And we could go down in 1 hour of one day. You know what we do? We're still shaking our fist in the face of the God who controls everything. Who do we think we are? Wow. Now I want you to see one final thing and I'm done. I want you to flip over to chapter 18. I want you to look at verse number 23. So thorough is going to be the judgment of Mystery Babylon, whoever she is, whether she's America or somebody else. So thorough is going to be Mystery Babylon's destruction. Look at what verse 23 says is going to happen or not happen. Look at this. Chapter 18, verse 23, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, Mystery Babylon. That's who it's talking to. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. You say, preacher, what does that mean? It literally means this. People aren't going to be interested when Mystery Babylon is judged and goes down. They're not going to be interested in getting married. Preacher, they're just going to be interested in surviving. Light of a candle be heard, seen no more at all. Bridegroom and bride's voice won't be heard anymore. Nobody interested in getting married, just trying to survive what's happened. Look at the rest of verse 23. For thy merchants, your merchants, Mystery Babylon, your merchants, your businessmen were the great men of the earth. Is that not true of America? For by thy, would you say the next word out loud? Sorceries, by your sorceries, Mystery Babylon, were all what deceived? By the way, the word nations is again ethnos. By your sorceries, Mystery Babylon, were all ethnic groups deceived. Now look up at me and I'm done. When you read the word sorcery in the Bible, or when you read it anywhere, you think immediately, probably like me, you think black magic, sorcery, right? By the way, y'all won't believe this, but I was a Shakespearean actor in college. Did you know that? I was. I'm not kidding. I was. In fact, the only play I wanted to be in Macbeth because I wanted to be one of those witches that are standing over the boiling cauldron and they're going double, double toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. They wouldn't let me do it though, brother. See, that's what we think of when we think sorcery, potions and black magic. Folks, I want you to understand, the Greek word that is translated into the English word sorcery in verse 23 of Revelation 18 is the Greek word pharmakeia, from which, yes, we get the English word pharmacy. You know what pharmakeia was in Bible times? Preacher, it was illicit drug use. And the chief offending drug in Bible times happened to be opium. You know what God is saying here? Mystery Babylon, whoever you are, it was your businessmen that were the great men of the earth. And by your illicit drug use, all ethnic groups were deceived. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, that sounds just like us. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Pastor, I got highly involved in a local sheriff's race in our county. There was a guy that was coming in as a carpetbagger trying to, I know this is going out online, I don't apologize. Guy came in, not even really part of our county, trying to be the elected sheriff. And we had a young man who was the deputy sheriff who is a hero. By the way, he went to a domestic violence call or domestic dispute call in our county and got shot 5 times. I interviewed him, had him on radio. His story was so compelling. I said, man, Banks, tell me about it. Tell me. He said, I drove up in the driveway. He said, I knew I was in trouble when the guy was sitting on the porch with a gun. I got out and said, put the gun down. He brought it up, fired, shot right through his hand. He said, as I'm drawing my service revolver out, shot through my hand and through the gun. Totally immobilized the gun, shot 3 fingers off my hand. He said, I run around behind my car. He said, we're trained to shoot with both hands. He said, I'm trying to find another weapon. And he said, I didn't realize this. I'm going around behind the car. Preacher got shot 4 more times. This is heroism. And by the way, this is why I love law enforcement. Enough of this defund the police junk. By the way, you had 2 police officers here last night who did a stellar job. Defund them. Are you kidding me? Here's heroism. He said, Dave, I got on the radio. He had never shared this publicly in this fashion. One of my friends said, Dave, I can't believe he told you on radio. But he said, I wouldn't let any of the officers that responded come into the kill zone. He said, from where I was behind the car to the roadway where all the other officers were was a 1/4 mile. You know what he did, preacher? He walked to them. Having been shot 5 times already. Bullets hitting the ground all around him. That's a hero. Can I hear an amen? And by the way, this guy loves Jesus with all of his heart. I said, I want to see you elected sheriff of our county. And praise God, he won over 60% of the vote. Can I hear an amen? The carpetbagger got about 30. Praise God. Still some people have common sense in America. When I was talking to this guy, getting his personal testimony so I'd know how to vote, he said, preacher, you do know this. I did know. But he took a salt shaker and I don't know, looked like 4 granules of salt he dumped out on the table. He said, Dave, do you know right there, that is enough fentanyl. If that were fentanyl, that is enough to kill everybody in this restaurant and a whole bunch more. And he said, preacher, I don't know if you know. I did know, but he put an exclamation point on it. He said, do you know the major artery that is taking drugs from our southern border all the way to our northern border is Interstate 77. It is the major artery, friends. Are you listening to me? He said, preacher, if I were you, I would not let your wife go. I'm not trying to frighten you. He said, to the Hickory Walmart, I would not let her go there at night, anytime after 9 o'clock by herself, because they patrol the lot, the human traffickers do, looking for women and girls to pick up. The number 1 artery in America from our southern border to the northern border for drug trafficking, human and sex trafficking is Interstate 77. And you know what we're doing, church? We got our head buried in the sand. Right. Preacher, look how strategically you're located here. To have a ministry to these people who desperately need Jesus. Can I hear an amen? Folk, you're not here accidentally. This church isn't growing accidentally. God's got his hand on this place for a reason. Are you listening to me? We're here for a purpose. We dare not miss it. What I'm trying to tell you is this. One of the reasons, key reasons God destroys Mystery Babylon, whoever she is because of her drug use. That ain't Rome. It's not. Now, would you come help me for just a second? I want you to stand right here and face me. And I want you to represent the next event on God's prophetic timetable, which is called the rapture of the church, okay? Have you ever done rapture practice? Okay? You know what he's saying? I'm waiting for the day Jesus comes back. I won't have to jump. He's going to pull me out of here. Amen. I'm in agreement. But you're going to be the rapture. Now, folk, watch. Next event on God's prophetic timetable is the rapture. All I know tonight is that hasn't occurred yet. Again, Brother Dave, how do you know that? Because I'm still here. All I know tonight is every one of us in this room, moi included, we are on this side of the rapture. What we don't know is how far on this side of this we are. Are we, preacher, it's laughable. Are we 200 years away from the rapture? Are we 20 years away from the rapture? Are we 2 years away from the rapture? Are we 2 months? 20, not getting cozy again. 20 minutes, 2 minutes, 20 seconds? We don't know, do we? All we know is we're on this side of that. Now, folks, please, I want to show you something. If, and it doesn't even seem feasible, if we're 200 years away from the rapture, whoever Mystery Babylon is, it could be anybody. If we're 200 years away from the rapture. If, however, we're 20 years or less from the rapture, America has to be a possibility. Because 20 years is not enough time for anybody else to rise to the prominence that is described here, which we fit that description. We have to be a possibility. You say, well, Brother Dave, are we Mystery Babylon? I cannot say that definitively. But I will tell you this, we are the strongest possibility out there right now. If we're 20 years or less, it would appear to me that it has to be us. If it's more than that, all bets are off. Thank you, brother. You may be seated. Folks, in one sense, it doesn't matter who Mystery Babylon is. But in another sense, it does. Because you've got friends and loved ones and co-workers and family members and neighbors that are going to be left behind after the rapture. And if they don't know Jesus, they're going to go through this 7 years of tribulation. And they're going to watch Antichrist come out onto the world stage. And they're going to watch this entity, Mystery Babylon, whether it's America or whoever. They're going to watch God judge her. And as He judges her, He judges the world. And the judgment falls on individual people. So we've got a vested interest in this. If we got people that are all around us that don't know Christ. That's why I've been trying to tell you folk all week. We're here on mission. What I think some of us are is AWOL. We've forgotten our mission.
Right.
What I want to do tonight is challenge you to get back on mission and understand why we're here. For the glory of God. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Father, would you speak to us tonight? Lord, I never cease to be amazed by the power of your word, the specificity of your word, the amazing nature of your precious book, including and especially the prophetic portions. Lord, as I read through and studied and prayed over Revelation 17 and 18, saying, God, show me something. Lord, as I delved into the words and the definitions of them, the meanings, Father, it just came alive to me. Lord, it sure looks like Mystery Babylon has to be us if it's 20 years or less from the rapture. But Lord, whether it is or whether it isn't us, the key thing we need to understand is we're here to fulfill a mission that you've given us, and that's to reach a lost world. So Father, please tonight, help us to understand that, and please don't let us fumble the ball this close to the end zone. The end zone is your return. Father, please don't let us fumble the ball this close. If we have fumbled it, help us to pick it up and run all the way across the goal line and live for you, Lord, till you come back to take us home. And Father, for what you do, I'm going to thank you. Now, folks, our heads are bowed, our eyes are closed. I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions. How many of you in the room can say, Dave, of this I'm sure? Jesus Christ is my Savior. Man, if the rapture occurred tonight, in the next 20 minutes, I know I'm going up because I know I've been saved. I know I'm saved. I know I'm going up in the rapture. If you know that's true, would you lift your hand and hold it as high as you can? All over the room. Thank you. You may put your hand down. Folks, tonight, I'm going to ask you, you've heard it so many times. You're going to be prone to let it go in one ear out the other without thinking about it. Please don't do that. Is there anyone in the room tonight that is not 100% certain that if the rapture occurred tonight, you'd go up? In other words, you're not sure 100% that you're saved. But God's Holy Spirit's dealing with you tonight. And you'd be willing to say, preacher, here's the deal. I'm not 100% certain I've been born again. But I sure know this. I don't want to miss the rapture. No, friend, you don't. I'm concerned, preacher, and I'd like you to pray for me. Friend, what I'd love to do is pray that before it's too late, you'll come to Jesus and be saved. Is there anyone in the room tonight? Well, I'm the only one looking. Everyone else has their head bowed and eyes closed, and I appreciate your cooperation. Is there anyone that would say, Dave, pray for me? I'm not sure I'm going up if the rapture occurred tonight, but I sure know this. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to be left behind. Please pray for me, preacher. Please pray for me. If that's you, would you lift your hand long enough for me to see it anywhere in the room tonight? Anywhere at all. I'm going to tarry just a couple of extra seconds. Preacher, I'm not sure. All right, I've got one final question. Before I pose it, I want to say this to our online audience. If you're not sure you're going to heaven, there's a number at the bottom of the screen. There are people waiting at phones right now here at Calvary Baptist Union Grove. You call that number, dear friend, they'll pick up the phone and they'll talk to you and tell you how you can know Jesus. They'll introduce you to Him tonight. Can I beg of you to make the call? God bless you. Friends in this room, I want to pose one final question. I've never been more serious in my life. I wish I could tell you everything I'm privy to, and I just can't. But I am going to say this. There's going to be a speech given Thursday night from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Independence Hall. The man who calls himself President of the United States right now is going to deliver it. And it's going to deal with this topic, protecting our democracy in America. Preacher, that sounds good. That shouldn't sound good to you at all, because we're not a democracy. We're a republic. There's democratic elements to what happens in our nation. The democratic element is we get to vote. But we're not a democracy. We're a republic. There's a big difference. If you don't know the difference, I would implore you to do your homework. I have no doubt, because of some things I know that are going to go into that speech, it'll be probably the most rabid advocating for Marxism you and I will have ever heard in our country. Because that's what's going on right now. Some of it's pure communism that they're advocating. What I'm trying to tell you, folk, is this. We are millimeters away from losing our freedom in this country. So if we don't exercise certain liberties, we're going to lose them forever. And the number one liberty that we ought to exercise is found in the First Amendment of the United States, where Congress cannot make any law respecting an establishment of religion. In other words, we have freedom of religion in America. We've still got it. So you know what we need to be doing with it? As Christians, we need to be reaching out. See, we have a higher mandate than just a constitutional First Amendment. We have a biblical mandate from Jesus. Ye shall be witnesses unto me. Matthew 28, 19 and 20, the Great Commission, which has become the Great Omission. We're to go into all the world and preach the gospel. We're to evangelize every human being. Christian friends, tonight I want to ask you something. Answer this in your own heart. How effective, how energetic, how deliberate have you been in trying to reach people around you in this community with the gospel? How deliberate have you been? How energetic have you been? How passionate have you been? Folk, we stand on the verge of losing it. Again, there's a lot more I'd love to tell you. I just can't. You're going to have to take my word. We're millimeters away from losing our opportunity to share the gospel. So what we're going to do, we have to start doing right now. So here's my appeal tonight, Christian friends. If you've understood what's been said, whether Mystery Babylon's America or not, in one sense is immaterial. It's somebody, looks like to me, we're the prime candidate. But Jesus is coming. And what we're going to do, we got to do it now. How many of you would be willing to say, I get it, preacher, I get it, I get it, I get it. And I'm going to become energetic and passionate and purposeful and deliberate in trying to reach the people around me. No more am I going to be fearful of what they're going to think about me. I'm going to speak up and speak out and share the gospel with those around me who don't know Jesus. Folk, not only must we do it, we can do it. Now I want you, with your heads bowed and eyes closed, just to stand to your feet as the musicians are playing. As you're standing with your head bowed, if you'd be willing to say, I get it, Lord, I do, I get it. And because of what I've heard tonight, what I've heard all this week, I'm going to become passionate, purposeful, deliberate, bold, unafraid, unashamed. I'm going to speak up and speak out, and I'm going to start telling people how they can know Jesus. I'm going to do it like I've never done it before. If you'd be willing to tell God that from your heart and mean it, I want to invite you to step out from where you're currently standing and join me down here in this altar and tell God that and mean it. God bless you guys and ladies. I'm going to start speaking up on purpose, passionately, deliberately, energetically, unashamedly. I'm not going to worry about what people think or what they might say. I'm going to speak up and tell them because I've got to. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Folks, this is not just for you. This is for me. We are giving it everything we've got from coast to coast. We have brought on 3 additional staff members to try to reach those powerful people on Capitol Hill. We're giving it everything we've got and then some. Preacher, why would you travel 10,000 miles in 30 days? Let me tell you why. Why would you lose your voice preaching all over the country? Let me tell you why. Because we don't have much time. And I'm all in. I'm all in. It's passionate, purposeful, deliberate, aggressive, unafraid, unashamed, man up time for God's people. We got to speak up and speak out with the gospel. Anybody else want to join us around the altar? Lord, I'm going to do it like never before. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to speak up. I'm not going to be afraid. No, I'm not going to. The same power available to the early church is available to us if we'll just access it. Father, I want to thank you. Lord, you haven't told us everything about end-time events, but you've sure told us enough. that we're not left in the dark. And Lord, I personally believe Mystery Babylon is America. I'm not adamant about that because, Lord, I don't know how much time we've got left. But I do know this, a clock started ticking in 1948 when Israel became a nation again. Your prophetic clock. And Lord, here we are. We fit the description of Mystery Babylon to a T. Something has to happen to the United States. Maybe we're Mystery Babylon. We make it all the way through the early part, past the midpoint of that tribulation and toward the end of it. Because of our incredible wickedness, God, you have enough. And you take us down in 1 hour of one day. Lord, we deserve that now. But Lord, what I'm asking is this, that you'll have mercy and grant us a little space so we might have a revival in our day. And Father, for what you do, I'm going to thank you and praise you. Bless these, my dear friends. And Father, help us to be back tomorrow night for a vitally important concluding message, an exclamation point on all that's been proclaimed this week. And Father, we'll thank you and give you glory. In Jesus' name I do pray. Friends, be seated just a minute. Look up at me. Pastor's going to come and close. I want to say one final thing. Do you remember God sent Jonah to Nineveh, and when God finally got him there, Jonah's message was simple. Yet 40 days and Nineveh, not might be, not could be, Nineveh shall be destroyed. How many of you remember this? You got 40 days, you're toast. Pretty simple, right? You know what happened at the preaching of that message? Starting with the king all the way down, they repented, put on sackcloth. And you know what God did? Brother, I don't understand it, Brother Looney. I can't explain it. But God changed his mind. Can I hear an amen? And he gave them more time. You're going down in 40 days. But they repented and God gave them more time. You know what I believe happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade? I believe God did that for a reason. Think of it, folk, after 50 years of prayer and some preachers preaching and people going to D.C. and marching for life, after 50 years, that which I never dreamed really in my heart of hearts I'd ever see overturned. I prayed for it, I preached for it, I marched for it, but I never dreamed really in one sense I'd ever see it, but it happened. Can I hear an amen? God didn't have to do that, but he did. I believe it's installment number 1 on an opportunity God wants to give in America again. Folk, what we do with that from this point on is up to us. So that's why I am more hopeful than I've ever been that God's going to send one final revival before he comes back. Can I hear an amen? I am so beyond hopeful that God's going to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done what he did with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And by the way, when Clarence Thomas, and he's public enemy number 1, he said, it's not within the purview of the federal government to make any kind of decision on abortion. That's a states' rights issue. He said, we're going to have to re-examine Obergefell, which is the decision that legalized same-sex marriage. And the people on the LGBTQ side went berserk. Folks, can I promise you something? I'm sorry, I know, because of our ministry on the Hill. They're waiting for a case to work its way up the judicial chain to where they can rule on overturning same-sex marriage. Can I hear an amen? Amen? Would you have ever believed it? God's having mercy on this country right now. Let's not fumble the ball this close to the end zone. Are you listening? I love you. Please be back tomorrow night. Preacher, you come.
Well, what a message tonight. Let's all stand, if you will. We're going to be dismissed in a word of prayer in just a moment. And did you enjoy that tonight? Man, if you didn't enjoy that tonight, something's wrong, I think. What a word we've heard tonight. And, I think what Brother Dave is saying tonight through this message is this. we must go on more radio stations. And we must support more missionaries. And we need more serving the Good News Club. And more folks going into these nursing homes on Sunday morning. We've got to. But not only that, but we've got to reach this word individually. You know what that means? That means putting some gospel tracts in your pocket and just trying to be a witness to those you come in contact with, because we don't know how short our time is. What a great message. Man, what a great stirring tonight. I'm so glad you came. We're excited about tomorrow night. I hope you'll be back. I'm going to ask tonight, before we go, I'm going to ask Pastor Whalen. It's good to have the Whalens with us tonight. Brother, Miss Whalen, Brother John, come on up here if you will. And I'm going to ask him to dismiss us in a word of prayer tonight. Sure appreciate these folks and what a blessing they are to us. And every Sunday morning, this man sends me a text just trying to encourage me, and just such an encourager. Preacher, come pray for us tonight if you will. Appreciate it.
Amen. Let's pray then this evening. My precious Heavenly Father, thank you for who you are and who you're allowing us to become. I just pray tonight, dear Lord, only you can. Help us not to sit here and enjoy the preaching of the Word of God. But Lord, help us to put it in our heart and live what we've heard tonight. Lord, we're so blessed to live in this nation. And dear Lord, for the majority of people, I believe we've taken it for granted. But dear Lord, help us to see tonight that it's dark out there. The battles are ugly. Things is going on. But dear Lord, our light shines brightest in the dark. And Lord, help us to be all that we can be for your glory. Lord, touch this church. Touch Pastor Pope. God, just guide and direct here as only you can in a great way. Lord, continually use this congregation, your people, for your glory. Lord, help us all to be serious about living for you and serving you. Guide us and direct us tonight, dear Lord, as only you can in a wonderful way. Dear Lord, as we go home, give us mercy and grace. Help us the remainder of this week. Lord, help us to purpose and determine in our heart, dear Lord, before we even, I know I won't get to be here tomorrow night. I'll be at church in my own place. But, dear Lord, before we come back tomorrow, Lord, help us to talk to somebody about being saved. Lord, not that I'm going to do it someday, but I'm going to do it today, tomorrow. Lord, every day, get up. We want to find somebody I can give the gospel to. Lord, guide us and strengthen us tonight as only you can. Again, thank you for letting us be here tonight. Thank you for Brother Kistler. And, dear Lord, just continually use him, be at this church. In Jesus' name do pray. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. We consider it an honor to serve you. And our prayer is that the service was a blessing and an encouragement to your life. If you were impacted today by the preaching of God's Word, we encourage you to respond. If we can pray with you, or if you would like to make a decision today for Christ, please call us here at 704-327-5662. We have people waiting right now on the lines prepared to help you. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to welcome you again soon. Have a wonderful week.